Welcome to another episode of Let Me Tell You Something. I am your host, Deldrian. Now, if you're watching us on YouTube, which you should be, you can tell that I have new hair. Yes, it is. My birthday is coming up, and so I want to get me a new do. So I know y'all used to the fro, but we rocking the twist right now. So if you tuned in last week, then you know that I was very much in my feelings, very much upset by what was going on with the government shutdown and the fact that 42 million Americans were not going to get their SNAP benefits. Well, by the time this episode is being recorded, there seems to be a plan to reopen the government. However, I am upset because what was all that for? Eight Democrats decided to give in to some kind of plan, and the plan is not planning. The plan does not help people stop their healthcare premiums from doubling, tripling, and it doesn't even give a real, promise that the Republicans are going to actually help enact a plan that's going to save people from being bankrupt by medical costs. There's not really a plan. And one thing I've always said, Republicans will get the job done for themselves by any means necessary. And as somebody who has traditionally always voted Democrat, one of my main gripes with Democrats has always been Democrats like to run campaigns, especially recently, on the fact that, oh, well, I'm not Trump. And if you want to win votes, being the lesser of two evils is still an evil. Being not Trump is not good enough. If you want my vote and you want the vote of the American people, then you have to start showing up and doing things that are going to protect our rights and our freedoms and our pockets. Because right now, going 30, 40 days off the basis of you're trying to stop the premiums from tripling, doubling, quadrupling, and only to then give in, what was all that for? I understand that people have been suffering, but if you want to get into the real nitty gritty, the tea, that people are going to suffer anyway, because during this whole shutdown, Republicans and this administration have had the opportunity to feed Americans and fund SNAP benefits, but Trump and his cronies have been actively fighting in court, tooth and nail, to ensure that you do not get your benefits. In fact, he was all but threatening states that if they gave full benefits for the month of November, there would be consequences. He is on record saying that he is tired of talking about affordability because in his mind, everything is great. You can afford groceries. You don't have to choose between rent and eating. He said everything's great, but it's not. And how long are we going to accept the bare minimum from our elected officials? But that is not the true essence of this episode. So this episode, I really kind of debated back and forth as to what I really want to get into this episode. So we're going to get into this. I was given some information from a family member who they had a conversation with somebody. And during the course of that conversation, that person revealed some very troubling, disturbing, wicked information. Basically, that person, who is white, said that not only do they have ICE's phone number, that they were going to call ICE on some of our Hispanic neighbors and, Hispanic community members, because he didn't like the fact that they were playing soccer, minding their own business, by the way, displaying their flags, or going to the local stores and buying up stuff with the government's money. And that really just spurred me to talk about, I ask this all the time, are we okay? And clearly that man is not. Racism is a tale as old as time. And I feel that a lot of people believe that they are not racist. I feel like everybody knows that racism is bad, but a lot of people don't feel that they are racist. And so this episode, we're really going to get into that. I'm also going to touch on homophobia and also transphobia as well, because those things are interconnected. So let's get into the racism part of it. Now, I am not here to say whether or not that man that I'm speaking to in that story is a racist, because I do not know what is in his heart. I do not know what's in his mind. I don't know what he truly believes. But what I do know is what he said was incredibly racist. And that is the thing. So often we get trapped in the weeds of what somebody is. We lose track of what they said and what they are doing. What you are is irrelevant, because you could very well not even believe those things, but the actions that you are displaying is what is important, and that is what is harmful. Intention versus intent. You may not intend to do anything harmful, but if I still hit you with my car, intent or not, you are still going to be bruised and broken and potentially killed by my actions, whether they were intentional or not. So I say that to say this: what that man said was absolutely racist. Why are you threatening to call ICE on people who are simply living their lives? What makes you believe that you have the authority to decide who gets to live in this country and have access to our life and resources? Who are you to say that those people don't belong here? Because if you want to open up a history book, who was here first? What were they doing? Living their life. And you can get into, well, they had war, they had this. At the end of the day, war and slavery and all these various things have existed throughout time. People have always done these things. But that does not give you the right or the moral high ground to come over here, enslave people, bring diseases, and destroy their civilizations. And so we sit up here talking about who's illegal and who's not on stolen land. Make it make sense. And honestly, the idea of calling somebody illegal or an alien is so dehumanizing. They're not a citizen, sure, but are they not a human being? Are they not deserving of life and rights and freedom? Because let's be very clear. This, y'all can like dress this up any way y'all want to. It's racism. Because the way y'all like to say, oh, well, it's about getting criminals and drug lords and all this. No, it's not. Because the vast majority of people who are being ripped away from their families are not criminals. They're not drug lords. They're not rapists. They're not murderers. They're not nothing but hard-working, not citizens, hard-working people who are simply trying to make a living for themselves, who may or may not have escaped harmful harm in their homelands. Or maybe they were brought here by their parents who were trying to escape. I don't know what their story was. But what I do know is what is happening with ICE is not only inhumane, not only wicked, it is also evil. And I cannot truly believe that some of y'all think that this is okay. Now, that man may very well believe that is perfectly fine. But I just want to ask, why would you see people with their shopping cart full of food and that upset you? Why would that enrage you to the point where you're going to get on your phone and call ICE like you're ordering a pizza and potentially uproot these people's lives because you feel that you have authority? And that's really has been white people's issue throughout time, is not knowing when to mind their business and thinking that they have more control than they actually do, and thinking they have the power to change people's destiny. That's always, but that. So I really want to get into conversation about racism. And when I say it doesn't matter what somebody truly feels, because regardless of whether or not you truly feel that way or not, the actions that you are displaying have the same result. And so let's talk about voting. Now, I don't want to believe that a lot of people voted for Trump because they're racist, because I think that would be a gross oversimplification of things. But I do believe that there were enough people who excused the racism. There were enough people that didn't mind being aligned with racism. And there are a lot of people who buried their head in the sand to racism. I couldn't tell you the amount of people who said, well, what makes him a racist? Or what has he done that is racist? And I feel like if you honestly have to ask that question in 2025, then you're not asking that question in good faith. You're asking that question to then debate whatever is said to you. Donald Trump has a long history of racism. Donald Trump's administration has a long history of racism. And that is not an opinion. That is a fact. And all you have to do is check the history, check the people who have been around him, check the ways in which he has enacted policy in his professional business life, as well as his policies that are largely impacting Black and brown people. The comments that he has made. People can say whatever they want to say, but the proof is in your actions. And that man's actions not only showed that he has an issue with race, has an issue with the LGBTQ community, has an issue with women. And when I take it back to voting, as far as like the immigration, the ICE of it all, I saw Hispanic people say, well, I thought he was just going to get the bad ones. And I ask you, why did you think that it was just going to be the bad ones? When has it ever just been the bad ones? And we are always so quick to separate ourselves from people that we deem as bad, when really, are they bad, or the circumstances that they found themselves in bad? Because you never know how you're gonna move in this life based on the circumstances that you were in. And so many people were willing to sell each other out in the hopes that they were going to get something out of the deal. And now they are finding that the way in which they sold other people out, they too are now on the chopping block. They too are now being sold. Their rights, their existence, their humanity are being called into question. And so when I'm talking about, the man who made those comments, if I was privy to that conversation, I would ask him, sir, how would you feel to be ripped away from your people? And you could say, well, they're here illegally. Well, the Pilgrims are here illegally. Did the Pilgrims ask the indigenous people to come here? Or did they get on the Mayflower and come search for a new home, escape from religious persecution? How is that any different than what people are doing now? Coming to America for a new life. Sure, there are people trafficking drugs. There are people committing crimes. But to continue to homogenize everybody who comes to this country searching for a different life as rapists and drug people and all those things is incredibly stupid, but it's also racist and harmful and wicked. Not the movie, just wicked in action. And so it's just disheartening that in 2025, so many people are still so ignorant, whether it's ignorant by choice or just ignorant to be ignorant. I don't really know. I don't know. But what I do know is the cure for ignorance is knowledge. The cure for ignorance is experience. The cure to ignorance is within you if you want it. And so for me, it's not just simply an act of, oh, I'm not a racist. What are we actively doing to combat racism? And we're going to get into that after this break. This is Let Me Tell You Something. I am Deldrian. We'll be right back. Thank you for joining us over on Let Me Tell You Something. If you've enjoyed what you've heard so far, let's keep that party rolling over on social media. Follow me on TikTok at Deldrian. Follow the podcast page on Instagram, Let Me Tell You Something. And follow us over on YouTube. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your friends or family. Now let's get back to more conversation on Let Me Tell You Something. All right, so I'm back. So it's not just enough to say, oh, I'm not racist, because race is all around us. And there are people who say, why are you making everything about race? Because the world makes everything about race. America has a race problem. The world has a race problem. If the world and America and the people in America and the people in the world didn't want everything to be about race, then you should stop using race as a way to make people feel less than, to strip people of rights. You cannot go 200, 300, 400 years making everything about race and then suddenly wake up one morning and say nothing's about race, because that's not how that works. You can't enslave people, strip them of their culture, their language, their everything, and beat them down, and then one day wake up and say everything's fine. That's a moment of the past. How could it be? Did anything really change? Sure. Things have changed in a lot of ways. People, we can read, we can write, we can vote, we can do all these things. But at the core, has anything changed? And the answer to that is no. Racism doesn't simply go away. It changes. It moves with the times. The same way we grow, it grows. And if we're not actively combating it, we're feeding into it. And some of the ways that we, as me as a black person, feed into it. There's a lot of ways that you could be black, and also there are a lot of black people who are anti-black who don't like black people. There are a lot of Hispanic people who sat there and voted for a man who disgraced your communities because you thought it wasn't going to be you. There are black people. There are women who voted for that man, who sit up here and believe things and who separate themselves from their communities because they feel like that is not them. That's the bad ones. That's them over there. It's not me. But it is you. Because the pendulum always swings back around. And today is them and tomorrow is you. But my other question to that would be, why are you okay with it being them at all? Why is you seeing somebody harmed not enough for you to act? And so when we talk about being anti-racist, we have to start within ourselves. We have to ask ourselves how we have been indoctrinated into systems of racism through our media, through our education, through our interpersonal relationships. Because it's very easy to say, oh, I'm not racist. But the question is that really true? Because when it's time to actually stand in the paint and confront certain things, are you going to really stand there and face the things that you have been taught and unpack them and unlearn them? Or are you simply going to say, well, that's too hard, that's too challenging? Because let me tell you something. Life is not always going to be comfortable. There are going to be times when you have to face some ugly truths about yourself and the things you've been taught. And I, for one, have had to face a lot of different truths. As a black person, as a gay person, I have absolutely had to deal with anti-blackness, internalized homophobia. And speaking of homophobia, I find that people who are minorities, racial minorities, who can somehow align themselves with homophobia and transphobia is very interesting, because it's one thing how you can understand how racism is bad, but you can't understand how homophobia is bad. Well, they're choosing to be that. Even if that was true, that people choose to be whatever, couldn't they just unchoose it if it was that simple? And two, even if there was a choice, does that mean that they get that is justification for harm? You don't agree with somebody's quote unquote lifestyle. Being gay is not a lifestyle. Being gay is someone's existence. It's not a lifestyle. Being vegan is a lifestyle. Being gay, being trans, being black, being Hispanic is not a lifestyle. This is someone's existence. And so when we sit up here and debating people's existence on the ballot, or debating someone's existence in our comment sections or in our group text or wherever, we are doing a disservice to ourselves as human beings. Because you do not have to understand somebody's existence to understand that people have the right to exist the way that they do. If it's not harming them, it is not harming you. And you being uncomfortable with something is not harmful. You not understanding something is not harmful. That is between you, your God, and yourself, what you have going on. But those kids playing soccer, it was not bothering that man. People being that woman, I don't know what state she was, who took her case to the Supreme Court to get gay marriage overturned. Ma'am, you could believe whatever you want to believe, but just because you believe something, that does not give you the right to enact your beliefs on other people. See, people love to preach about belief and love to preach about acceptance, right? Until they have to accept somebody else's truth. And somebody else's truth may be different than yours, but that doesn't make it any less truthful. Someone being in a same-sex relationship is in no way different than you being in your relationship. It may be two people who are the same gender identity, sex, whatever, but it doesn't make it any less meaningful. And just because you don't understand that, do you not understand it because you don't want to understand it, or you're just so consumed by everything that you have been taught that you can't see anything else? And so when I implore people to remember that there is more to life than our own understanding, I implore people to look beyond what we have been taught and what we see in front of us, and see the existence of other people, to see how other people live their life. I come from a very small town, and I have always been fascinated with seeing more of the world because there is so much richness and culture and diversity. Diversity and culture and all those things are the fruits of this world. And we will continue to try to snuff them out when we're banning books, when we're getting rid of DEI, when we're getting rid of all these things that help enrich us. We are poisoning ourselves. And so when it comes to, like I said, racism and transphobia and homophobia, it is alarming that we are so afraid of things that we don't understand that instead of gaining a better understanding of the world and the people around us, we rather fill ourselves with hate. For instance, I grew up watching television and movies, and I saw so many straight heteronormative couples in cartoons, kissing, marriage, all those things, and still turned out to be gay. Now, if it was so easy, couldn't I not just watch that again and be straight? You're saying that, oh, it's going to confuse the kids. What is going to confuse kids more? You simply telling your children that sometimes love exists in a different way? Or filling your children's head up with so much rhetoric to the point where they become adults full of hate, full of bigotry, that they go and enforce that hatred and bigotry on other people? Now, I also want to ask you, when we talk about LGBTQ stuff, why is your first thought something nefarious? Sex. Why is that your first thought? Because when I grew up and I have seen two same-sex people kissing or anything like that, or just existing rather, my mind didn't automatically go to something wicked. That stuff is taught. And the more we feed into it and the more we make excuses for it, we're feeding the beast. If you can sit there and say that you love Black people, you love Hispanic people, you love Asian people, you love gay people, lesbians, trans people, gender nonconforming, if you love any of these things but you actively vote against them, do you truly love them? When we talk about race, let's talk about the N-word. Now, I have a very firm stance about that. If you are not Black, with Black parents, you should not be saying the N-word. You growing up around Black people does not give you the right to say the N-word. Just because your homeboy, homegirl, they say you can say it, that's fine. But if you truly love this community like you say you do, then saying something that could potentially hurt people from a community that you claim to love should be enough for you not to say it. I wouldn't, if I grew up around a bunch of Asian people, that doesn't change the fact that I am a Black person. I am not an Asian person. My mother and father are not Asian. Even if somebody did give me the okay to say certain things, knowing that it could potentially hurt someone from that community that I love, that would be enough for me. Knowing that something could be potentially harmful would be enough for me. So why isn't it enough for you? Or is it because the community that you claim to love you don't love the community, you love what you can get from it? And when I ask people all the time about different various things about when it comes to race, when it comes to homophobia, when it comes to transphobia, when it comes to intersectionality, how these things intersect, a lot of people sometimes draw a blank because these are not things that are prioritized. We say like, well, I don't care what color you are. You should. You should care about someone's sexuality. You should care about someone's race. Not in the sense that you care because you want to harm them. You care because that's part of what makes them them. That is a part of what makes them who they are. And at a time now where we're continuing to snuff out diversity, it is more imperative than ever that we understand that though there are differences, those differences do not divide us. They only divide us when we allow them to. Someone being a different race to you does not take away their humanity. Someone being a different sexual orientation or gender identity from you does not take away their humanity. And when we lose sense of humanity, when we continue to turn a blind eye to what people have going on, when we continue to turn a blind eye and align ourselves with people whose only goal is lining their pockets and fear-mongering and making sure that people are divided so they can continue to do what they do and stay in positions of power to harm and control us, we are doing ourselves a disservice. And that disservice is breaking communities, because community is what's going to save us. And the more we divide from that, the worse off we'll be. And I really just want to implore everybody to take a breath, take a beat, and step outside yourself and your way of thought and understand that it's not enough to simply say, I'm not racist, I'm not homophobic, I'm not transphobic, because while I can't say what you truly are, some of the things that you may be saying may be harmful. And I feel like we get so caught up in the label of these things, we miss the action. You could say these things and maybe not be a racist, but the things that you are doing and saying are harmful, and you have the opportunity to turn away from that. And it's never going to be an end all be all cure, like, oh, you're not racist anymore, you're not this, you're not that. You're going to always change, and growth and elevation is not linear. But when you are committed to doing the work, learning, growing, and elevating, you're going to continue to call yourself out and call yourself back in and do the work to make sure that you are a part of the solution and not the problem. We don't need allies. We need co-conspirators. We need people that are going to stand in the plate to make sure that we are doing what needs to be done to ensure that everybody has access, and not only has enough, but more than what they need. Because right now, people don't have enough. We're all fighting for crumbs at somebody else's table, when we could be building our own table where everyone not only has access to what they need, they have enough to share. And so I hope that through all of this, I feel like I was I was rambling a little bit, but truly, we just need to grow and expand our minds and expand our perspectives. And so I just really hope that through this conversation, it's caused you to just think just a little bit about what we have going on and what needs to be done, because people are suffering. And like I've said numerous times on this platform, community is what's going to save us. And so if you can be a part of the change that we need in this country, in this world, do it. Learn, grow, listen more than you talk. Surround yourself with people who exist differently than you, so you can gain a better understanding of how the world works. The differences in this world is what makes this world beautiful. So let's be a part of that beauty. This has been Let Me Tell You Something. I am Deldrian, and I will catch y'all next time. Bye.